I can see our panelists, participants coming up. Let's wait for 2-3 minutes more and we'll start the session. Is it fine? Hello, am I audible to everybody here?
Yes.
Okay. Namaste, adab, 𝗬𝗏, and hello everybody listening to me via Zoom from different parts of the world. I hope all of you are healthy, happy, and safe at your places. I'm really sorry, I should start the video now, sorry. My sincere greetings and a warm welcome to you all in this international webinar, COVID-19 and Climate, a Global Perspective. I'm 𝗬𝗫 𝗵𝗲, an undergraduate public health student and your moderator for today's program. As the picture shown in the screen here, Pravisha, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, as the picture seen in the screen shows, we're facing a global health crisis of COVID-19 right now. Approximately 33 million people are infected with COVID-19 globally, and 998,000 people have already lost their lives. With increasing food scarcity and hunger issues, tremendous declination of economies throughout the world, another issue we cannot definitely ignore in this pandemic is climate change. It's true that COVID-19 has brought in tragic number of deaths, pain, suffering, and losing of our close ones. But can you believe? Climate disaster could be the next reason for such. In this regard, 𝗬𝗵𝗵 and International Society for Research on Children and Youth's ISRCY are here with this virtual webinar of COVID-19 and climate change. In close collaboration with 𝗬𝗵𝗵, Associate Partner, the International Institute of Knowledge Management, and supportive hands of 𝗬𝗵𝗵 Kathmandu and Sustainability Week Kathmandu to link both of these disasters. In the program, we're aiming to equip you all with authentic information regarding COVID-19 and climate change through healthy two-way interaction with subject experts. We'll inform and educate on the repercussions of COVID-19 and climate change here. We'll also critically discuss and analyze the climate change status pre and post-pandemic. Finally, we will also provide you all with practical and relevant information on way forward measures for climate resilience. I'm quite sure our participants will acquire a bunch of information at the end of the program. So please be ready with a pen and paper at your side because you are about to learn a lot from this session. Now, before introducing our respective panelists, whom I can already see in this session, I'd like to request our participants to give their introduction in the chat box, mentioning their full name, their home country, and weather at their place right now. For example, if I am 𝗬𝗫 𝗵𝗲 from Nepal and the weather here is sunny, then I'll write 𝗬𝗫 𝗵𝗲, Nepal, and sunny only. So let me see our participants writing their introduction in that pattern, please. I'm waiting for the introduction, guys. Please write down the weather there as well. Welcome, Sabita ji. Welcome, Anish ji. Yes. Please mention your country as well. Yes. You may just write your full name, your country, and weather there. Okay. Maximum of us are here from Nepal here. Okay, as our participants introduce themselves in the chat box, meanwhile, I'd love to introduce our panelists for now. Our first panelist for the program is Mr. Manjeet Dhakal. Mr. Manjeet Dhakal is the head of 𝗪𝗍 support team at Climate Analytics. 𝗪𝗍 stands for Least Developed Countries. He's provided high-level climate leadership support for the 𝗪𝗍's officials and ministers in climate change, UN-related processes over many years. He's also a program director at Clean Energy Nepal And what's more, he is also a member of the Managing Committee for the Environment Protection Fund at Government of Nepal. It's such a pleasure to have you with us, Manjeet sir. Similarly, our next amazing panelist for today is Ms. Marie-Claire Graff from Switzerland. To name a few of her works and achievements, she is a youth advocate and change maker for sustainable development and climate solutions. With the belief that children, youth, and future generations are the receivers of today's decisions, successes, and failures, she herself, as an active youth, has diverse engagement around all dimensions of sustainability on a local, national, and international level. It makes us proud to announce that she was once an award holder of prestigious UN Youth Climate Champion for Switzerland. And she is also a co-founder of Sustainability Week International. And the list goes on and on. It's a real privilege for us to have you in our program, ma'am. Okay, so before starting the formal session, I'd like to inform that there will be total 3 rounds in the program. And at the end of every round, we have question and answer session with the audience, where our panelists will be encountering the questions asked by our participants. So I humbly request our participants to feel free to express yourself in chat box and drop your questions and queries in the Q&A box. If you wish to verbally ask the questions, you may simply raise hand and ask there as well. Okay, so let's get started. Climate and climate change is a huge concern for everybody now. So before entering into the main discussion, it's really important for us to get a clear understanding on what climate and climate change actually are, no? So may I request Mr. Manjeet to unmute yourself and provide us with the basic introduction on climate and climate change in your words. Can we have you?
Thank you, 𝗬𝗫𝗍, and thanks for the invitation. I'll directly jump on the topic and the questions that you have asked. The basic information about the climate and the climate change. Many of us are aware that the level of greenhouse gases, the gases in the atmosphere, the best example that we can take is the emission that we get by burning fossil fuel that comes from vehicular emission, that comes from forest fire, that comes from not well managing the waste. Yeah, so those gases in an atmosphere has been rising in an extraordinary way, particularly from the industrial age, and that those gases has the capacity to hold the heat coming from the sun. So because of which the global temperature has already been risen by 1 degree Celsius in last about 100 years. The countries in the world in 2015 through a UN process on climate change called the Paris Agreement has agreed to limit that temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius. There may be a confusion that, oh, that means the temperature has already risen by 1 degree, so do we want it to rise more 0.5 degree? That's not right, because the gases are already in the air, in the atmosphere, which has, some of them has a longer life as well, 100 years and 1,000 years, which has a capacity to hold a heat for a longer time. So if we don't act now, if a country doesn't reduce emission, and if the carbon dioxide and other gases keeps on accumulating, the temperature will steadily keep on rising. So that's the reason the countries agreed not to let it go beyond that limit. Even in the 1 degree rise world, the countries around the world are facing tremendous impact that we will discuss throughout the session. And on all this, there are 2 options that we move ahead. One obviously is mitigation, which means reduction of those greenhouse gases, which can be done by going to clean energy, by changing our lifestyle, and a number of other activities. And the second option that we can deal with this is to adapt with the situation, which means to adjust with what's happening, which we call adaptation in the climate change jargon, which means there will be a flood, there will be extreme event where the government, the local community will be building an infrastructure to adjust with those changes. Or in terms of agriculture, they will be coming up with the crops that are resilient with the changing context. So that's where we are. If countries in the world couldn't act, if the world leaders are not serious, the emission could go beyond 4 degree or 5 by the end of this century, and the impacts will be exponential, and the future generation will be facing more difficult situation. So that's where we are. So the clear message here is we need to act now, and we need to act urgently. Thank you.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you very much for such information. Ms. Mary, would you like to add something on the introduction part, please?
Yes, thank you so much also for the introduction. And it looks like I'm the only one from Europe. So a very warm hello from the other side. So I think, like, of course, I agree with everything that was already said, but I just want to make very clear that the climate and also climate change itself is not something which is extraordinary. So this was always part of Earth, right, and our climate. But what is different now is that it's changing very, very, very rapidly. It's changing so fast as never before in history. That's why we don't have the time to adapt, not only we as humans, but also natural ecosystems and so on. That's also where the danger comes in. So whenever people say like, oh, climate and climate change something natural, yes, of course it is, but we really bring our very fine balanced system out of this balance. And as I'm also a teacher for primary school, so for kids, and then always have to make it very simple. So maybe you can use this as well when you have to explain someone about the climate crisis. So you can think about yourself and your normal body temperature is around 37 degrees, a little bit warm, a little bit colder, so this is very normal. There is always a range. But if this temperature goes up 2 degrees, you actually seriously starting to think, okay, what is going on? You really act now, right? You get some treatments and really try to mitigate, to use the same words, to mitigate these effects and really try also to find the root causes. And if your temperature is still going to rise and all the doctors are going to say like, this is very, very serious, there might be a collapse of your system, of your body system. I mean, I don't know about you, but I would panic, right? So I would make everything possible to really address this issue. And I think this is a really good analogy, how you can explain why 1.5 or 2 degrees matter, because it also matters for our body. And very often people say like, oh, you know, 1.5, it's a little bit warmer, it doesn't really matter. But also for your personal body, it matters a lot. And also, since we talk also about COVID and health, I think this is a very nice way to explain it, and also to really show that you have to act now. And if it would be your parents or your sister or a very good friend, you would also act. So why shouldn't we act if it's our Mother Earth? So it was not like an introduction, but I think it's a nice way to explain it as an introduction to the climate and the climate crisis.
Indeed, Ms. Mary, 1.5 degrees is not an ignorable fact at all. Thank you very much, Ms. Mary, for your words. I hope our participants have got a clear concept on climate and climate change now. As we know, climate change is already evident in most parts of the world. So moving on to our next question of discussion, what specifically are the factors or things that are resulting in the change of climate? Ms. Mary, would you like to elaborate on the possible determinants of climate change globally? And please mention if there are any specific determinants of climate change there in your home country, Switzerland. Over to you, Ms. Mary.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Also, it was already mentioned before, very quickly. So, I mean, one of the major contributions to the climate crisis, of course, is the burning of fossil fuels, which is used for heating, for cooling as well. for producing electricity, for fueling the cars, and of course also aviation, airplanes, and so on. But also coal. I mean, this is one sector, and it's really big. So there, yeah, the solution is like phase out of coal, fossils, oil, and so on. But very often forgotten, it was also mentioned before very quickly, is the whole agriculture sector. Agriculture can be a huge solution, actually the #1 solution to the climate crisis. So if we have a regenerative, sustainable and climate-friendly agriculture, but currently, for example, all the cattle livestock around the world, they're contributing to 14% of the greenhouse gases around the world. So a huge emitter, and definitely one of the major determinants for the climate crisis. So I think these are two very big ones when it comes to human activities, but then also the whole production, the industrialization, all the exploitation of the resources also, sometimes directly, but also indirectly leads to the climate crisis. For example, when the forest is cleared and cut down, so the whole deforestation would then also could lead to desertification, then as well as not like the soil and the plants are not able to mitigate. And with this, they actually also contribute largely to the climate crisis. So there are a lot of different angles how we can tackle climate change, but these are the main contributors. And in Switzerland, so it's a lot about heating and cooling, because in summer we have to cool, and in winter we have to heat. But also the whole transportation. When it comes to car, we have a huge aviation sector, so Swiss people fly a lot, but also our agriculture system, and we import a lot of grey energy. So we are not producing a lot here in Switzerland, but we import, of course, a lot of goods, and all of them, of course, have also a kind of a footprint. But this is not happening here in Switzerland. It's very often happening in Southeast Asia, actually, and we are using the products, but we don't emit the resources directly, or we don't emit CO2 directly.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Mary, for such a clear and concise answer. We're getting to know a lot of new things globally and there in Switzerland as well. So as the determinants mentioned by Ms. Mary, are there any other factors responsible for climate change here in Nepal? If yes, I would request Manjeet sir to put some light on it, please.
Thank you. I think Mary has well covered in terms of the international context. I will focus in terms of Nepal, and the picture is similar. The major emission in Nepal case comes from the agriculture and the land use sector, which is rising rapidly. Then there are also emissions coming from the transport sector, mainly under energy. But the situation obviously is different here, as Nepal being one of the least developed country. When we talk about the agriculture, it directly linked with the food security, and because of that, the focus has not been much in terms of reducing emission from agriculture sector. That's also because of the lack of technology available, the lack of further research, and the international community also doesn't put a pressure to developing country, and particularly LDC, to reduce emission from the agriculture sector. However, there has been some initiation from the government level also to and the research how in the longer term Nepal remain carbon neutral, or how the green or the low carbon economy can be maintained. And agriculture has been obviously one of the sector. The other area, as I said earlier, is transport, because the transport sector is fully dominated by the fossil fuel use that we import from a neighboring country, which also is linked with the overall economy. Just last year, the total the amount in terms of the currency, Nepali currency, we import 2 crore amount of petrol and diesel from neighboring country. If we can only save a 5%, if we can only reduce a 5% of consumption of petrol and diesel, the country can save 10 million US dollar annually, which can be used for a number of other purposes, including in the COVID recovery or context related to air pollution. Specific in terms of what's happening in Nepal because of all this, and it's not only because of Nepal, but the way the emissions are rising. Nepal emission is rising rapidly. Our maximum temperature trend annually is rising at the rate of 0.056 degrees Celsius per year, which means in last 45 years, the maximum annual average has been risen by 2.5 degrees Celsius. I'm talking only about the maximum average. And this has impacted a lot because more than 80% of the extreme events that we face in Nepal are directly related to climate related disaster, like flood, landslide, glacier lake outburst flood, and other. Yeah, so that's where we are. There has been a long debate in terms of Nepal's emission is very low, so whether Nepal should reduce or not. But my understanding currently, when I interact with the government, the policymaker and other, is we can show a leadership. We can be someone who can help the international community to show a path in terms of how the clean energy movement can go ahead, how the low carbon and the economy can move hand in hand. Yeah, so the country has been taking a leadership approach rather than a victim perspective, saying that we are poor, we are vulnerable, and we are impacted by climate change. So that's where we are. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for such a valuable information, sir. We got to know that our country has emissions from mainly agriculture and transportation, which is resulting in the climate change in the context of our country. Thank you so much for such an insightful answer, sir. So, climate was not more of an issue in past, but why is this sense of fear associated with climate change in the present context? As far as I know, there must be some critical and harmful effects or consequences of this climate change in many aspects. Therefore, we're fearing this a lot, no? So I'd like to request our panelists to discuss on the same, which is the effects of climate change. And it would be great if you focus on the effects on health and environment a bit more, since these are the most directly affected areas of concern. Therefore, to briefly explain on the effects of climate change on health, I'm requesting Ms. Mary to have your say on this, please. Over to you, Ms. Mary.
Absolutely, and I'm just trying also now to turn on my video. It has my settings. I have been in need disabling, but it will just work in a second. Yeah, I mean, very correctly, as you pointed out, the climate crisis, of course, has also a huge effect on health. And I think this is also really important when we now talk about COVID, because COVID, like, I mean, of course, climate change was not the only reason why we have COVID, but with the climate crisis, more and more such diseases are going to spread. So while we do take action on the climate, we can also reduce the risk of having other pandemics like Corona. But of course, it's not the only, sorry. Sorry, apologies. Of course, it's not the only health effect it can have. At least here in Switzerland and across Europe, we have a lot of heat waves in summer especially. So it's really hot, and a lot of elderly people, they cannot cope with the heat. And for them, actually, it's a deadly heat wave. So heat can be one of the health effects. Also on kids, then we have, of course, a lot of effects when it comes to the spread of diseases. Also, what is, for example, in Switzerland, I don't know how it is exactly in Nepal, but we have been seeing more and more, for example, mosquitoes coming with tropic diseases to our region. This was never happened before, as you might know. We have a lot of snow, a lot of glaciers, similar than in Nepal, and we never had these diseases because the animal, like the mosquitoes and also the ticks, they couldn't live here. And now when it's getting warmer, so they are surviving, they actually find it quite comfortable being here. So we see more and more also these new diseases coming we haven't seen before. And maybe on the last aspect, when it comes to health, so there was actually a major study done by the European Union on the decrease of the efficiency of workers when it's getting hotter, because when it's getting hotter, the human body cannot work for so long or so much or so hard. And there is a huge economic loss due to the climate crisis because it's getting hotter and hotter. So as you can see, it's a really interlinked topic, and it's not only a health crisis per se, but this then again has another effect, for example, on the economy, or of course also on the whole health sector.
Ms. Mary, you've been muted. Would you unmute, please?
Yes, and I just turned on my camera. Now it works.
Okay.
So this is what I think from my side, and I'm very happy to hear other responses.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for such an insightful answer. Would you like to add something to this, Manjeet sir? And if not, we would love to hear your perspective on the effects of climate change on environment as well. So over to you, Manjeet sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, in the recent years, the impact of climate change has been over all the sectors, and then obviously the health is one among all. And I think some of the example that Mary has said obviously relates with our context. There has been a research article as well as many news in television and a newspaper about that we are getting mosquito in the higher hills and the mountains. Some of the diseases that has been eradicated has been that there has been a coming of those diseases now and again, and yeah, obviously I think this is the situation where we are. To focus more on the environment and on the global perspective, there has been an increase in the heat, a drought. Obviously, as I said earlier, the insects outbreak, all these are linked to climate change. We have also seen the increase in the wildfires. There has been a decrease in the water supplies. Many parts of the world has experienced reduction of the agriculture production, and even in Nepal, in South Asia, we have seen the growth of the extreme events, for example, the flood, the landslide, yeah. So and these and most of these events are not bounded within a political boundary of any country, which also needs a broader thinking in terms of the regional collaboration as well. So the context where we are is the atmosphere and the ocean has warmed. The amount of snow and the ice has diminished. The sea level has risen, and looking at the projection, they will rise rapidly. And then all this shows that the future climate risk will also depend on how soon we will be able to limit the temperature rise, how soon the major economies will be able to peak their greenhouse gas emission and will bring it down. If we focus on the biodiversity side, there has been a recent report released by IPBES, which confirmed that around 1 million animal in the plant species are now threatened with extinction, many within a decades and more than ever before in the human history. There has been an average abundance of a native species in more that we have seen as of now. There was a recent report released by the intergovernmental organization based in Nepal called 𝗬𝗍 mode, which have also confirmed that among the around 3,000 glacier lakes that has been identified, around 1,400 of them are in a verse of and it has been also confirmed that well, specifically focusing in Nepal, but the contexts are similar in Switzerland case in terms of glacier lake. In our case, for the Hindu-Kush Himalaya, even if the global temperature is limited to 1.5 degrees Celsius, the glaciers in the Hindu-Kush Himalaya will melt by 1/3. So as we said at the beginning of this, obviously these numbers needs to be taken seriously, and the reduction needs to be happen very urgently. The other particular case of Nepal is also the Nepalese farming population who has a low capacity to adapt and to build resilience are the one who will be facing the major impact in terms of the agriculture production because of the difference in the water availability, which will ultimately impact the economy of the country as well. So this shows that we will be facing the impact from every round, and the poor and the vulnerable community will be the one who will be facing the evidence of this impact. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, absolutely, sir. It's sad to know that we're in constant threat despite of any backgrounds due to climate change, as everything is so interlinked with each other. Thank you so much, Manjeet sir, for such a research-based information. So with this, we come to the end of our first conceptual round of the program. Now we'll be dealing with the questions from our participants. So let me see if there are any questions here. Oops, no questions so far. Dear participants, if you have any questions related to round one and you feel something has not been addressed, you can ask here, it's your chance. I can see a question from one of our participants, Ms. Sabita Gautam. She has asked, basically in the recent scenario, due to COVID-19 situation, we have a gradual change in the climate and a kind of progress as people have become conscious. So is climate change still the major cause for spread of the COVID? Ms. Sabita, we have this very question at another round. So we'll be addressing this question at that particular round. So please have patience for this. Any other questions related to round one, please? And please mention the questions in the Q&A box rather than the chat box. Do we have any questions, participants? Otherwise, we may proceed. Okay, assuming that there are no any questions now, we'd like to move on to the second round of this program. So our first concern in this program will be the linkage of COVID-19 and climate change. So we'll be discussing on the pre-COVID and post-COVID climate status, both from the perspective of our both panelists. So Ms. Mary, would you like to say something on the pre and post-COVID climate status?
Yes, absolutely. Sorry. Okay, I can go on and start. So I have also been following the climate negotiations first as a observer and later on for the government of Switzerland, and it was a really desperate situation because there are like a lot of, especially young people, but also the country, like the least developed country, also the small island developed countries and many others really wanted to do something, but of course then you always have the same countries and stakeholders who are not really committed. So it was a very tricky situation. So the science is very clear. I mean, in fact, since many years, but I think since 2008, since there was the 𝗬𝗏 1.5 special report, it got even more severe. And then you had all the climate strikes around the world, and yet of course a lot of countries who really wanted to move forward. So it was kind of stuck. Everyone knew that we have to do something, but everyone was in this cycle. And then COVID came and was really taking kind of an emergency break for us, right? So it was full stop when it comes to the international negotiations, but it was also a full stop in our normal life, how we moved from place to place, how we were eating, how we were also shopping, and literally everything. And I think this gives us a very interesting situation, because it's always hard to change a running system, especially if it's working well for the ones who are on top of the decision making and dominating a lot of others. So this is, I think, nearly impossible to change such a system. But when you have, it doesn't have to be a pandemic, but if there is such an emergency break, full stop, this gives a lot of opportunity in the post-COVID. So in the very beginning of the COVID, there were a lot of reports. Yeah, now it's getting, the earth can take a breath, and now it's getting better, and CO2 is going down, and nature is coming back. But I mean, of course, but this is a very short sight. So of course, when we are not flying, not commuting, and not producing so much, of course the CO2 is going down. But this is, first, it's not the solution, because the crisis shouldn't be a solution. And second, it's a very, it's like a down peak, right? But as soon as the production is going up, travel is going up, then of course also the pollution and the greenhouse gas is going up. So this is not a long-term solution, and what we need is to have a long-term stabilized solution, which is also fair. So especially also, yeah, there is a term of the common responsibility, common but shared responsibilities, so that, for example, the countries who are also now affected by the COVID crisis the most, but also affected by the climate crisis the most, but they contributed the least, that they also in this case then they have to reduce less of the CO2, of course, and the greenhouse gases. And I think this divide got now even bigger with COVID. But as already mentioned, this gives us now a really great opportunity to act differently. And now in the whole rebuild, or there was a better rebuilding now together, that we incorporate already the climate scenarios, that we already incorporate our targets for the Paris Agreement, that we now, when we give money for rebuilding the economy to the business, that we then also tell them that, oh, there is a target and you actually have to be net zero by 2030, 2040, or 2050. You have to have a plan how to phase out of coal. We can shift our energy system, we can shift our agriculture system because of this opportunity we are having right now. But unfortunately, at least here in Switzerland, major contributions went, for example, to the aviation sector, instead of supporting small farm holders, supporting people with the traditional family businesses. So again, giving millions and billions of dollars to the people who already have huge businesses, and which are also very polluting. So what I think is now very important, that also we as young people and everyone are really making also pressure to support the people who living towards this implementation of the Paris Agreement and of the solution itself, to then really have a better system after COVID, and that we can say, of course, it was a crisis and it costed many people's life, but we could build something better and something more climate friendly and resilient out of it.
Yes, absolutely, Ms. Mary. You are very correct. Thank you so much for such an insightful answer. Now, I'd like to request Manjeet sir, if you have to say anything about the pre-COVID and post-COVID status here, specifically in Nepal, please. Over to you, sir.
Sure, thank you. And I think it relates exactly what Mary said earlier in Nepal's case as well. The momentum was picking up before, If I just have to take an example, Nepal was very much ahead in terms of preparation of country plan that country will be submitting to the UN climate change process, called Nationally Determined Contribution for the Paris Agreement, which includes targets and then activities that every countries are planning to do, agreeing on a goal that has been agreed in a Paris Agreement. So that work got delayed after the COVID situation. The government had updated the climate change policy that was initially formed in 2011, uh, and we have a next update in 2019. The the economic activity was also moving ahead with the low carbon strategy that Nepal has been putting forward, maintaining both the environment, the economy, and the well-being of the people. But obviously, this has been in halt now from the policymaker perspective as well. Not only the climate change, but many other key priorities has been sidelined to deal with the immediate problem of COVID. Yeah, so this has obviously impacted, has kind of distracted many other priorities. But if I had to just take an example of what the UN Secretary General said in one of the events, both the coronavirus and the climate change are a serious problem and require a determined response from all sides. But COVID-19 is a temporary problem that will go in time and go away, but climate change has been there for many years and remain with us for decades and require a constant action. So if we lose a focus on this, then obviously it's not going to be helpful. So that's the reason there has been a discussion around in terms of the green recovery, in terms of how the COVID recovery can go hand in hand with balancing the environmental concern as well. And some of the examples that we have already discussed earlier are about there should be no attempt to fill the immediate gap by again reviving the fossil fuel industries or many other initiatives that the government has already taken in many countries. So there has been a discussion in Nepal as well that what can be done in that context, how the green recovery, the economic stimulus package can help to deal with the COVID situation as well as to deal with the climate crisis, and help building the long-term resilience of the people. Obviously, the COVID has been has created a threat multiplier to climate change, and the impacts has been difficult, not only in Nepal but in many countries around the world. Yeah, so the two major sector, if I have to say, in terms of Nepal, the agriculture, no, the three: agriculture, the remittance, and the tourism. These are the three major sector that helps the economy, and mainly these three sectors has been impacted heavily. Tourism, obviously, the remittance, yes, in that may seem some positive indication in the shorter term, but will have a major impact in the longer term. And also the agriculture, and in terms of agriculture, that relates directly a number of sense with the climate change because of the change in pattern of the rainfall, because more than half of our agricultural land are not irrigated and depends on the rain feed irrigation system. So that's where we are. The situation is still is not clear how the recovery process will take, how the environmental concern will be taking. But I think it's all our responsibility, and we can discuss this at the end about the role of the youth, where we have to keep on we have to keep eye where we have to keep on speaking about these points as it relates directly with the future of the generations. Thank you.
Yes, sir. We completely agree with you. Thank you for such an relevant and valuable information, sir. Moving on to our next question. Our next question is the most repeated questions asked by our participants during the form registration, and even in the Q&A box, we could see that question by one of our participants. So the question is, if climate change has to do anything with the occurrence of COVID-19 cases, or are there any kind of climatic factors or elements that affect in the increment or decrement of COVID-19 cases? So first, I would like to request Ms. Mary to address this question, please.
Yeah, thank you. And I already mentioned it before quickly, but happy to elaborate a little bit more on this. So, I mean, there are different factors which are, so you cannot say like climate change directly is causing the pandemic, but there are, of course, as it like both is a very complex system. I mean, pandemic as well as the climate crisis, there are a lot of factors which are then supporting, so climate change factors which are supporting the pandemic. And I think the most, or the easiest to explain is, as already mentioned in the beginning, that the Earth is in a very well-balanced system. And when you bring this system out of balance, of course, pandemics can happen much more easier. In this case, it is also very much linked to, for example, deforestation, just bringing the whole like natural harmony out of place. And with this making it also much easier than to have such widespread diseases and pandemic and other non-curable diseases. So if we would have a very strong and resilient biodiversity, which also would be able to cope with the climate crisis, it would be much easier for the natural system to actually deal with a pandemic. But because of all the deforestation, and also as correctly also pointed out before, that there is a huge biodiversity loss. In fact, we are in the midst of the 6th mass extinction. And we, in many parts, still have a lot of where we live very close with the animals together, but not in a nice way. But these animal markets, the trade of especially also of protected species, this of course is all leading to the infection, or that the infection actually go from the animals to human beings and then spread also very, very fast. But that it actually then went to a pandemic, meaning that it's like all over the world, is mainly coming through our very globalized system. It can be due to goods which we are shipping and flying around the world, but also, of course, due to our normal life. I mean, climate conferences are a good example. So last December, we have been meeting in Madrid instead of Chile, and there were 22,000 people, if I'm not mistaken. So a lot of people from all over the world. I mean, 196 countries are coming together. So of course, if like someone is like only someone, and then you meet and greet, and everyone is mingling around and sitting in the same rooms, and no one is putting sanitizers and masks. Of course, this is spreading very well and very fast. So climate change is a contributor, is supporting the spread, but it's not the only reason. But also our globalized system, due to also tourism, what was mentioned before, but also this international conference, of course, led to a very, very fast spread all over the world. And also now we see when there is a lockdown, and when we, I mean, not closing borders, but if we try to contaminate the virus at a location, the cases then decrease, and we can also recover.
Yes, absolutely, ma'am. Thank you so much for such insightful information and practical examples for this. Manjeet sir, would you like to add up on this? If you want to, you may proceed.
Yeah, I think there is not much to add and agree with what has been said. Very briefly, there is a clear link between the public health epidemic and the climate change. I'm not talking about the COVID itself, but the linkage between the public health epidemic, because the climate influences the distribution, the frequency, the types, and the severity of the infectious diseases in human. Because the deteriorating environment triggered by the climate change can also lead to increase in the about the conflict, the resources, which in turn which also kind of triggered population to get displaced. And when we have this kind of situation, there is a the contact between there is a possibility of a contact between the human and this infectious diseases and organism could rise. So I'm not talking specific in terms of COVID, but the situation obviously gets exaggerated with the changing climate, with the rise in temperature, and not specific to COVID, but we have seen this situation in many other cases. For example, many of the virus that has been eradicated in terms of human health has been seen again in different parts of the world. So yeah, so it looks like the world has to be determined, the leaders has to be determined in terms of taking action on climate change. Otherwise, there is a possibility that this kind of situation and maybe the worst situation could come in the future. So I think the COVID has also been a kind of has shown us a way what can be done, and also has taught us a lesson that the kind of the collaboration, the kind of determined action that countries has been taking for COVID, if similar kind of determination remains on climate change, this problem can be dealt in a short time. So yeah, so I think this has also shown us how worse the situation could be if we don't act on time. Yeah, so I'm not a health expert, so I'm not going to detail in terms of linkage, but obviously the health academic has a linkage with climate change.
Okay, thank you, sir. I got the message that if we don't act now, we'll never have the chance to. So thank you so much for this, sir. So moving on to the next questions, I'd like to ask what the country has to provide as legislative actions for addressing climate change in case of Switzerland now. So may I request Ms. Mary to put some light on the legislative actions for addressing climate change very briefly, please.
Absolutely. So in terms of Switzerland, we are just now, because of the pandemic, the parliament couldn't meet. So at the moment, we have been agreeing on our national implementation of the Paris Agreement. It took us quite long, in fact, 5 years, because we had a very strong force of a lobby who didn't want to accept any stronger commitments to the Paris Agreement. So Switzerland has in fact been the first country in the world who has submitted the NDC, the National Determined Contributions. But yeah, until actually like last week on Friday, they couldn't agree on how they actually want to fulfill their pledges they have been making internationally, which of course is a shame, because they have been pretending to move very fast forward, but then at the end it's all about the national implementation, right? What actions are we taking on the ground to overcome it? So we are working on it, but of course, for example, it's a very complex issue. A lot of different legislations and policies are addressed. So we have still a huge lag when it comes to agriculture. So we still have to work on.
We thank you, Ms. Mary, for the information you provided. So coming back to Manjit, sir, what laws and policies do we have regarding climate here in Nepal, sir?
Yeah, I think I said some of them at the beginning. We have a umbrella policy on climate change called Climate Change Policy, recently updated. There are policy related to adaptation and building resilience. There is one called NAPA, National Adaptation Program of Action. formulated in 2010, which kind of presents the list of initiatives that countries should take in an urgent manner to adapt with the situation. Then there are also a number of sectorial policies, for example, the policy that relates to environment-friendly vehicles, the policy that relates to renewable energy, and so on. Specific again in terms of climate change, in 2016, Nepal has submitted its first nationally determined contribution on climate change, which provides a list of actions that Nepal is planning to take, Nepal aims to take in terms of climate change. Yeah, so with all this, I think that there is also much to be done at the national context. As I said earlier, if we just take an example of the transport sector and the petroleum product that is being used in the transport sector, the last year Nepal import of petroleum product was 2.2 times higher than the total income from exports. That means the total export that Nepal is making from variety of other sources, we pay 2.2 times higher just to import one product, that's petroleum product. And the figure is the figure that I gave earlier. If we can just reduce the use of petroleum product by 5%, we can save annually $10 million US, which will also help to reverse the trade deficit that we have, which will also help to reduce air pollution, particularly in the urban area, and also helps to the cost of the medical expenses that we have because of the air pollution related diseases and number of other which are directly linked to this pollution. Yeah, so with all this, I think there is also much to be done. And as I said earlier, the COVID situation can be taken as an opportunity for green and resilient recovery, where such areas where the country will benefit in terms of reducing emission and also taking forward the economy hand in hand. Those options should be explored. One of them obviously is the transport sector to go green, to be electrified. And we can have a list if we keep on discussing on this. So there are some good initiatives, there are some gaps, and there are some actions to be taken. Thank you.
Yes, definitely, sure. Definitely, sir. That surely was very informative for us. Thank you so much. So this marks the completion of our second round of the program. Let's see if our participants have anything to ask. How is climate change affecting the planet right now? I guess the question has already been answered previously. So do you have any other questions, participants? If you have any kind of questions, this is your chance to clear your queries, so please. Okay, I think our participants are very clear with the discussion. So moving on to the final round, with the completion of all this discussion on COVID-19 and climate change, our participants must have been sensitized and well informed on the same. So Ms. Mary and Manjeet sir, would you like to suggest some way forward measures for sustainable efforts and actions to mitigate climate change in future? You have already mentioned some of this, but do you have any additional points, please?
Maybe I can start with some additional points. And yeah, I think whenever we pointed out the problem, there is already a solution. And I think it's also very important to acknowledge that we have all the solutions already today. So we have the knowledge and we also have the money to actually implement, but the money is not at the right place, and the knowledge not at the right place. But the solution is there, so we could, in fact, already now phase out of the coal and move to a climate-friendly agriculture system and so on. But there are some strong forces, and this leads me to a point. As I do think there are a lot of also young people today at the coal. It's very important that we also have more young people from the university, but also entrepreneurs in our decision making, because at the end, if the solutions are out there, and there's also a lot of young people maybe work on sustainable entrepreneurship, but the solutions are not mainstreamed, and the solutions never get on a large scale implemented, because we already talked about it. It's really urgent. We don't have much time left, in fact, between 9 and 10 years. And this doesn't mean that we have to wait 9, 10 years, because then we actually have to have been already over the shift. So we really have to start right now. But it's also at least that more young people have to go into these institutions and also change the decision making. So of course it's not a direct way forward or solution, but it's a very, very important one, because if our institutions are not representing the young generation, who in fact will be the most affected by the climate crisis, and only an older generation is is in charge, who might not be that well informed, because back then in the education system they were not informed about the climate crisis, so they don't know. And I mean, I don't want to blame them, but why not also encouraging more young people to be part of decision-making structures? Then, as already pointed out, I mean, there needs to be a change when it comes to agriculture. The number one solution was scientifically, there is a project called Drawdown, and they scientifically did some analysis about the different solutions and came to the conclusion that shifting our agriculture system to a regenerative one, because the soil and the plants, of course, take a lot of greenhouse gases, are the number one solution to the climate crisis. And I think this is in case of Nepal, but also in case of Switzerland, very, very important, and also making farming and agriculture more attractive for young people. I think this is a really, really important step, which is unfortunately very often overlooked, at least at the climate change conferences. We, of course, have a 𝗏𝗏𝗏 work program. So, of course, there is something, but it's never getting the attention it actually should, as one of the major solution when it comes to climate crisis, but not only the climate crisis, but also when it comes to biodiversity, but also, as we talked already before, when it comes to health and many other issues we are facing right now. So these are maybe some additional solutions we have to acknowledge. And then the very last point is, of course, education, because if people know what crisis we are in, if they know about the climate, the biodiversity crisis, you don't have to beg for action. People are doing it themselves because they are so scared and they really want to do something. It goes back to also the example I brought before. If you are very sick or your parents are very sick, you're going to act, but you're not going to act if you don't know what it is and you don't know how to treat the disease. But if you know, you're going to act very fast. So spreading the message, informing people, informing your family, everyone, and don't blame people if they don't understand, but try with examples, easy examples, and also a hopeful message solution to convince them to join us in this fight and in this way forward. I think it's very important.
Indeed, Miss Mary, those were really insightful and so impactful recommendations. So Manjit sir, would you like to put some light on this additionally, please?
Sure, thank you. And thanks, Mary, for such a clear information. Just if I have to focus on the national level, then I think I have presented some of the examples earlier on a broader sense, and also focusing on the younger generation. At the national level, our understanding is that the climate change has been something imposed by other and so-called developed countries, and we don't have to play a role. As we see our role, and also there has been a kind of messaging that our role is more as a recipients of funding in the name of climate change. I think unless we don't change our mindset of this victim narrative, of presenting ourselves as the most vulnerable, poor, and so on, I think we will not be able to take much forward on this issue, because this will always dominate leadership. This will always dominate the proactivism that the country has to take. So the narrative has to be changed to proactive leadership, and we can do that. In case of Nepal, the country with a tremendous potential of renewable energy resources, our forest coverage, and the traditional practices to adopt with the climate change are the best in the world that we can share and we can influence other. So there is much to be done from changing our mindset to influencing the policy, and to build a narrative that we can do, and then we can show to the world the mistake that the world and the countries have been taken in the past. We don't need to repeat that, and we can be someone to show to the world that how the development and the environment can be taken hand in hand ahead. Yes, thank you.
Yes, indeed. Proactive leadership is the thing for now. Thank you so much, Manjeet sir, for such valuable recommendations. So with the discussion completed, what would be your message, your final message for climate action to the participants watching us and to the entire generations? Many of the message has been already encountered in the sustainable efforts, but if you have any specific kind of message for climate action to the participants watching us and the entire youth generation, what would it be? I'd like to start with Ms. Mary.
Yeah, very quickly and very brief. There is hope because there are solutions. Despite a lot of people say, oh, there is no solution out there and now we are anyway doomed. This is not true. All the solutions are out there. And young people have to be the main drivers of this, together with an intergenerational approach with everyone who want to be part. But also historically, we have seen that often young people have been triggering something. Yes, there have been climate strikes around the world, but the climate strikes are not the solution. They are a tool to make change. And now I think it's very important, of course, to keep up the pressure on the climate strikes, but also proactively, as was mentioned by Manjeet already, proactively go into the institutions and be the drivers. And there will be a lot of backlash. I have been going through this myself. So often young people are not trusted. When I was a negotiator at the climate conference, I have been asked, yeah, I'm the secretary, where is our negotiators? Like, I'm the negotiator here. So you will face this, but yeah, please, giving up is a luxury we don't have. For our generation, for the next generation, but also for our lovely planet. So my message is very simple: don't give up, despite it will be a long and a hard way.
Yes, definitely we should not give up, Ms. Mary. What an amazing message you have provided, Ms. Mary. We cannot thank you enough for such motivation. Manjeet sir, what would be your message for the youth then?
Yeah, the numbers that we have been speaking from the beginning in terms of the rise in global temperature to limit to 1.5 degrees Celsius. If we look at the report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and the other analysis, and there are a few other data that has been analyzed, it shows that the world will reach to 1.5 degree around 2035, which is like 15 years from now. And the people who are above 60 years age, only the half of them will be experiencing that situation. But the generation which are less than 16 years, 16, almost all, 97% of them will experience that rise of temperature of 1.5 degree in 2035. This has also considered the average life expectancy of the world. So this clearly shows that how important this issue is for the younger generation. And if you don't act now, how the situation will be. We have already discussed in terms of the impact, the situation where we are and where it can go. One thing that I really want to stress in the current situation, and I cannot speak for the whole world, but specific to Nepal, in the lockdown, in the situation where we are in terms of lockdown in many countries, we all are there is a less possibility that people can go around, and and we all are locked in our houses, the data shows that more and more people are using internet, more and more people are hanging around their mobile phone, on Facebook and TikTok and number of other things. So I think this is a grand opportunity that which I think we haven't seen for a long time, and which we will not get in past as well, to get a hold of such a big mass who are using internet, who doesn't have much other work to do because the classes has been disturbed, because there are no the classes ongoing, and people are focused using internet on their mobile phone. So I think this is the best time that we focus in terms of spreading our message. We plan, we reach to those people, we act and we connect this generation so that they understand the context, so that they can act. So I would suggest to make the best use of this opportunity that we have. Thank you.
Yes, sir. There are many opportunities even in the crisis. So I'd like to request our participants watching us to make the best use of it, as mentioned by Manjeet, sir. That was such a powerful and progressive message you provided to us, Manjeet, sir. Thank you so much. I'm sure our participants are well encouraged and motivated from our panelists for sound climate action and making our planet a healthy and happy place to live. So this marks the end of our final session as well. So I can see some of questions here in the Q&A box. मौसमको परिवर्तनमा प्रभाव पार्ने मुख्य तत्त्वलाई हामीले कसरी नियन्त्रण लिन सक्छौं? How can we control the key factors influencing climate change? Manjeet sir, would you like to address this question, please?
Sure. So yeah, there is one line in Nepali and then in English.
Yes, sir.
There is a difference between weather and climate. The term used in Nepali, Mausam, is weather. The question in English is about the climate. The weather is the short-term changes that we see around. It's sunny outside now. There could be a cloud after some time, and then it could even rain after some time. So that's the change in weather that we see in a specific region and after a certain time. Climate, in terms of the scientific findings, has been considered the average condition of that specific area for minimum 30 years, 30 years. So the situation where we are in now is that situation has been changed, mainly because of human activity, mainly because of the rise in global emission, the greenhouse gases. How can we control? It's simple. You need to do a little research. I can share you the list here, but you need to check where the source of emissions are coming from, and we have discussed that enough during our session about the use of fossil fuel, the heating, the energy, the agriculture, and number of other. So that's where we have to, and it has been, the fact now has been well established is that the emission can be reduced and the economy can also go ahead hand in hand, because there was a misconception that if you take emission reduction, if you take actions to reduce emission, then your economy may not proceed. So that has been proven, and there are examples that many countries have presented that. So yeah, and if you have to take a specific example, reduce the use of fossil fuel, reduce deforestation, manage the waste properly. There are interventions to be taken in forest, in agriculture, and a few others.
Yes, sir. I think our participant has got the answer now. One of our participants asked, how is climate change affecting the planet right now? So I think this question has already been addressed in our previous round. So without an assumption that everything has been clear now, this marks nearly the end of our session. My heartfelt appreciation to our panelists, Manjeet Hdakal sir and Ms. Mary Claire Graff, for such an informative and valuable discussion, and to our participants for their activeness throughout the session. So with this, I would like to take your leave and hand over the stage to Deputy Secretary General of ISRCY, Mr. 𝗬𝗵𝗲, who is dedicated to accomplish 𝗧𝗵𝗺's mission to provide knowledge, networking opportunities, and educational activities to the children and youth activists and researchers worldwide, to provide a vote of thanks and formally end the session now. So this is me, Angela, signing off. Thank you. Thank you so much. Can we have you, Mr. Dominda? Yes, yes. Okay.
Yes, I think you can hear me. Right. Thank you very much, Ms. Angela Pandey, for your valuable introduction of me. And I believe this was an amazing webinar with a lot of inputs, insight, and knowledge sharing. So actually, I personally learned a lot of things from the panelists, and there are very valuable comments and questions from the participants too. Anyway, the webinar, COVID and Climate, Global Perspective, is an effort of many people and many associations. I would like to thank and admire all the parties who supported to make this webinar in a great successful. So especially, I would like to mention the co-initiator of the webinar, Mr. 𝗵𝗵𝗂. He's from Nepal, district coordinator at Team 𝗍𝗵𝗵 global volunteer, a blogger, content writer at 𝗧𝗵𝗺 and a batch member of pastime 𝗵𝗺. So he was the first, he was actually first discussing with International Association, International Society for Research and Children and Youth, especially with Ms. Ganesha Kirnalia and Ms. Nilakshi Gunatilaka, and they put a tremendous effort to bring this webinar forward. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, guys. So your effort on this webinar. So this global event co-organized by International Society for Research on Children and Youth, which I am representing, and the Team 𝗍𝗵𝗺, a Native Enthusiastic People's Association by 𝗬𝗺. It's a non-profit, non-political, non-profit, non-governmental youth organization working in the field of youth leadership, health, and well-being, education, and environment protection. If we can say a few words about 𝗧𝗵𝗺, which I'm representing, it is an association formed to connect researchers and interested parties related to children and youth research around the globe. So we have very active members from more than 20 countries. And actually, I invite all of you to join our association. So we are doing a lot of events, a lot of empowerment workshops, and for the researchers, for the other youth, for the interest parties around the world, everywhere. So we actually empower thousands of activists each year. So I invite all of you to join with us and take part of this great course. So thank you all the organizing committee, organizing part. Then I would like to thank other event partners. As collaborative partner, Pastime 𝗵𝗺. Pastime 𝗵𝗺 is a youth-led network working primarily on environmental health with water, sanitization, and hygiene, and disasters, epidemics, envoicing environmentally sound and healthy communities through advocacy and dissemination of information. Thank you very, very much. An associative partner, the International Institute of Knowledge Management. So that's one of the famous and recognized institute in the world regarding the publication and research and the conferences. And other supportive partners, Team 𝗍𝗵𝗺 Kathmandu, a non-political, non-profit, non-governmental youth organization working in the field of youth leadership, health, well-being, education, and environment protection. And Sustainability Week Kathmandu, a student organization to bring sustainability in institutions and contribute for achieving sustainable development goals. Thank you very much. Then I would like to thank our distinguished panelists, actually, Mr. Manjeet Dagal from Nepal, head of LDC, Least Developed Countries Support Team. Thank you very much, Mr. Manjeet Dagal. And Ms. Marit Claire Graf from Switzerland, She is the youth advocate and change maker for sustainable development and climate solutions Switzerland. Thank you very much, Ms. Mari. And our moderator of the day, Ms. Anjayla Pandey from Nepal. So she's the public health scholar, published at Team Nepo Kathmandu, and campus ambassador at Sustainability Kathmandu. So thank you very much, Anjayla, for your time, effort, inputs, opinions, sharing during this session. Thank you very much, all the panelists, for the today's session. So then I would like to thank other organizing committee members. Actually, they put tremendous effort behind the scene, namely Mr. Ritendra Badu from Nepal, a member at Team Nepo 𝗏 and Ms. 𝗏 Thing from Nepal. So she's a member of Team Nepo Kathmandu. And Mr. Keerthi from ICRCY and Mr. Kushanta Deshan from ICRCY. And lot of there are like lot of people actually put a lot of effort to make this webinar success. Thank you very much, all the members. Last but definitely not least, I would like to thank our participants from for the webinar from different parts of the world, from Sri Lanka, from Nepal, from India, from other countries like Europe. A lot of the participants. Thank you very much. There's a lot of people joined through Zoom and also joined through the YouTube. Thank you very much for your valuable participation and engagement. A lot of questions came in. So thank you very much. I believe like you gain a lot of knowledge, opinions, insight regarding the subject area. So thank you very much all. So have a nice day.